All right, if you stuck with us through the interim, thanks for your patience. We're back. We're switching formats and we're switching guests. Julian Knobs here. Welcome. Happy to have
Thank
you
you.
here.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
All
These
right,
are some of the greatest tournaments that I get to watch them and I get to say stupid things about them. So
excellent.
that's
Okay,
way cool
so
about it.
let me just recap where we're at here. After we left the modern, I said we're moving to legacy wherever the tournament was at. There is one match still playing in round three, so we're going to pick up the start of round four. We have okay, the players are sitting down, deck lists are ready. Let's go ahead and take a look. I don't know what we're gonna watch in the first or not the first round. This is the fourth round. We're gonna see David Delgado playing Doomsday. There you go.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh, good.
there
And it's
are
Super Doomsday.
yeah, this is Doomsday, and Doomsday, we talk about this every time we see Doomsday because it's not that often. 5, 10 years ago, it was a rather complicated but straightforward spell-based combo deck. Now, these decks all have, like, plenty of control elements in them.
Yeah, and there's something else. Are you noticing the lack of a very specific card?
Let's see, if you tell me there's no dark rituals, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
exactly. That's
oh
it.
my, that's wild.
Like at this point, it's almost like a creature mid-range deck that just happens to play Doomsday. Like, look at this. You have Fatal Push in the main deck. You don't have Dark. Like the only thing that still resembles a combo deck is like your four of Lotus Petals, I guess, and of course the Doomsday combo, which is like one of the most compact combos in the entire format. Yeah,
Wow,
that's the recent
that's
development.
yeah, so this is like I mean, we saw yesterday is it mid-range deck that just happened to have Underworld Breach in the deck as a combo finish, and here we have the same kind of thing with Doomsday. Alright, let's go ahead and look at David's opponent, Harrison Fang, playing, okay, something a little bit more mainstream.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Also, at this point, like the one of Pyroblast and the main deck is standard. Like at this point, you might even wonder whether people will start playing two main deck Pyroblast at some point. But other than that, it looks pretty straightforward. Like the one flag slot is, I guess, is Chain Lightning.
Right.
Sometimes people play. I can't properly see it. I think it's only three Mishra's Bauble in this deck. The most recent PTQ winning deck list played four Mishra's Baubles. But other than that, like Blue Red Diver is always like a pretty straightforward deck in the way it's built.
Okay, well, let's get things going. Our first legacy match covered this weekend. We're in round four. We got two players who are 3-0, Harrison Fang and David Delgado. Looks like David's taking a mulligan, but oh no, I'm sorry, he was just shifting in his seat. So here we go. We're underway. And like many a game over the last decade, turn one Delver Secrets. Good place to start.
Yeah, it's just like the very best thing you can do in the first turn when you want to put your control deck under a lot of pressure. It's interesting for Doomsday. Like Doomsday can just like sit back and eventually try to get its own big dragon out. And there's not too much that Blue-Red Diver can really do about that in the first game. Like they have the one of Pyroblast, but if you put down an 8/8 dragon, Harrison is gonna need to either like out tempo or trade heavily in favor of David to get rid of it.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's one of those things that makes Doomsday better, and Doomsday has always like complained about the Blue-Red Diver matchup being really bad, and I guess that's one of the ways also Baleful Strix to try and fight back.
Right. Oh, the Baleful Strix certainly helps as we see a second Delver, and we know that there's a Brainstorm in Harrison's hand, so they're likely to flip. Here's a Fatal Push to take out the Insectile Aberration, so diminishing what's incoming here, and yeah, we'll continue on. So, blind flip or Brainstorm?
It depends, right? If you want to spend your mana or something like an expressive iteration on this turn, you'd really rather have it available. But if you feel like it's gonna be worth it, especially since you have the fetch land to potentially shuffle something away, it might be more worth it. But you don't really have all that much information to go with right now. Like basic swamp, fatal push, and scalding tarn. Like, what am I facing here? Like, you could almost put David on Doomsday, but that, especially the main deck fatal pushes are a very recent development that
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily be able to read here.
Okay, well, we'll see how Harrison handled this. Meanwhile, my phone just started going off. I'm getting texted pictures of the border or the promo Otawara. So this is your fault.
Yeah.
But,
Get them now before Joe buys up all of them.
all right. Now let's see. It looks like maybe there's a problem with one of Harrison's sleeves. David points it out. Then it's like, I don't really mind, but yeah, you're probably gonna have to change that. So okay. Brainstorm resolving. And I guess it doesn't matter if Harrison flips it over because Delver's going to flip it anyway.
Still trying to figure out what David could represent here other than potentially like the very outside chance of Doomsday. But yeah, for Harrison, I mean, right now it's pretty clear what you want to be doing, right? You want to just go ahead, you want to attack, and ideally add something more to the board. I think he's sitting on 2 Force of Wills plus 2 Pitch Card.
Yeah.
That's pretty good spot to be. Decides not to use that ponder. He's really just saying, okay, I'm gonna sit here on my Java, and whatever you're gonna do, I'm just gonna try to stop you. And
Yeah.
that's everybody knows that's the Diver game plan. Ugh, that's really the card you don't want to see. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't fault him for forcing that even.
Pitching Force. I mean, pitch casting Force deal with Baleful Strix kind of stinks, but also letting it be in play isn't good either. It's a 2 for
Yeah.
1 either way. It's just going to hold off this Insectile Aberration. And now David all of a sudden is just like, yeah, sitting pretty. Like, okay, I'm good. Defense is set up. What do you got? Well, convenient draw.
Yeah, that's the one thing, and you shouldn't really be afraid to aim this at the Baleful Strix. Like, whatever you're gonna do otherwise with that, it's
Yeah. So that did come off the top of the deck. So Harrison knew that was there. The second card down on the Brainstorm. So was able to fetch it away, decided with the Strix in play, nope, I'll go ahead and draw it, pick that off, and then get through 3 damage either way. Just now there's no blocker.
It's gonna be interesting to see from David's side here. At which point do you even like completely abandon the Doomsday plan, or maybe the Doomsday plan isn't even your plan A in the first place here? Maybe you're really just gonna try to grind it out with a couple of big dragons, removal spells, and Baleful Strix. And you just like, yeah, see, it's just gonna be another Baleful Strix. And that's a super legit game plan for the deck. With all these Murktide Regents in the deck, you can really just like grind them, and if your opponent has to manually remove them, it adds up. Like all of those Baleful Strix are gonna be Lotus Petals in the graveyard almost for your Murktide. And if you get to draw out of them and trade for your opponent's removal spell, yeah, sign me up. That sounds good.
Yeah, we saw David there commit a land to the board and then realize he already played a land for the turn, so picks that back up. And down to 10 life, we're probably feeling pretty safe right here.
Yeah, 10 life is still okay, right? But you really get into territory where you feel like you kind of abandon the Doomsday plan, and yes, unless your opponent's tapped out and you feel like you have a way to go for it on this turn. But it's beatdown wise, you're still sitting like in a pretty good spot, right? You have a blocker, you even have a remover spell here. Oh my god.
Yeah. Main phasing off a Fatal Push here. And Harrison will be left with, I mean, how does Harrison even force a will this Fatal Push? You really can't, because you can't get through anyway. So
the thing is, what are you gonna do with your Force of Worlds anyway? Are you eventually gonna try to force of like a Planeswalker? Because that will be another big thing. But of course, we know that David is not gonna have a Planeswalker here. But if you're playing against what seems to be a bug control deck, or thus far blue-black control deck, your forces are probably not going to be all that great in the first place. So you fire them off and try to tempo it out. Like you can do it from 10. It's not unthinkable. Or you shuffle them away, or try to grind them out with Expressive Iteration, which is a card that Harrison doesn't really have in hand right now. But at least that can be the game plan that you construct, and it's up to Harrison to figure out what he wants to do here.
Yeah. All right. So it looks like the frame rate is degrading here, whether that's on the broadcast or just our feed, I'm not sure. But well, I guess if it's not on the broadcast, then ignore me completely. Don't worry about it. Okay. Apparently it is just me. So
me too.
okay. So anyway, this will continue on. Yeah, so the Force of Will's still in hand, I think, mostly because there wasn't anything better. I would imagine Harrison would have been willing to trade in at least one of them in that spot, but it was just an abundance of lands.
Yeah, I mean, another way to play the game that I could see that we haven't mentioned yet is to straight up use the Force of Words to protect your Murktides. There's probably not going to be too many things in a, like, what we thus far perceive as a blue-black or blue-black-green control deck that could actually stop a Murktide Regent. And maybe that's the idea. You get a Murktide Regent, somehow deal with the Baleful Strix, and use your forces to facilitate that plan.
All right, so here is a ponder and a shuffle from Harrison Fang. Clean up this a little bit, and yeah, looking for a way through these Baleful Strix, which, I mean, if mono Baleful Strix is all David has played so far, but that's perfect.
I mean, that's why they're on the deck, right? And
Yeah,
sometimes you play like against another combo deck, and you just wish these were dark rituals, so you could go for it in the first turn.
I
That's the
remember.
trade-offs you have to make.
I remember. A few years ago that there was Doomsday decks that were just had like 2 Baleful Strix, and then it was just all combo deck, and then more Baleful Strix, and now there's more counters, and now there's more removal, and now there's not even a combo deck anymore.
I wonder whether that's a thing, right? I guess we have to look at the sideboard again, but I
Mhm.
could even imagine scenarios where you completely get rid of the combo.
Yeah, sure, why not? All right, so we can see Harrison's hand looks like a couple forces and a couple land, and that's not exciting. And he's still, like you were saying, he still may not actually know he's playing against.
Yeah, maybe he's just sitting there and he's waiting for the big haymaker from David's end to be ready and fight that, and then hopefully get there with either iteration like we mentioned or Murktide. Little does he know that there's never really gonna be that much of a big haymaker as in like a planeswalker. David already like put his best creature to the table other than Murktide,
Mhm.
and yeah, we'll have to see. Like if I'm in David's spot, I'm super happy just like sitting back and grind it out here.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you start attacking with your Baleful Strix here. Why not? Not going to amount to much, but maybe Thassa's Oracle plan doesn't come together. And I mean, I hope we don't have to sit through 18 attacks from Baleful Strix, but you never know.
I mean, there's people who play Legacy for exactly that kind of interaction. I remember when
Sure.
I started playing, when I played it, survival decks, I would beat people down with like Secure Tribal and sometimes
Oh,
Eternal.
geez, that's cruel.
Yeah, but then when Shrine came along and the dream was gone. So now we do this. Take one, take one, take one.
Well, David sitting with, I mean, just the Baleful Strixes have amount of the card advantage so far. So certainly up in resources, and now here's a real card as far as a real threat, at least.
Yeah. You know what the dream is? The dream for David is you never get to show that you actually are Doomsday. And then Harrison, there's a really good chance that Harrison sides out the forces. And then game two, all of a sudden
Yeah,
you're in Doomsday deck.
yeah. Oh, here's a force back.
And now
Pitching,
and now we know what it is.
yeah, pinching Temporal Mastery. That's the name of the card, right? The Miracle Time Walk.
Yeah.
And yeah, Harrison's like, wait a second, what's going on here?
That's just like another one of these recent developments, right? Where you can create some Doomsday stacks that are even invulnerable to endurance because temporary mastery doesn't go to the graveyard; it exiles itself. So even if they have an endurance, they can try to go for it, but your graveyard isn't big enough so that your Oracle still gets there. It's kind of funny.
Hmm. Okay, expressive iteration for Harrison now facing down more sizable threat, and like you were saying, this is not 6/6 Murktide is not something that Delver can very easily deal with, aside from, I guess, its own bigger Murktide.
Yeah, you can either go for your own bigger Murktide or you trade like 2 for 1, sometimes even 3 for 1, depending on how it works out. But that's definitely not where you want to be. Like you're only now starting to make up some of the card disadvantage that you've suffered, but this is going to be pretty rough. We can't just like try to keep going and try to find more excessive iterations, but expressive, not excessive iterations.
Well, either word applies.
Yeah, in this case, yeah. But we just don't have enough time. Like Doomsday is just gonna beat us down for something like I think 7 a turn. That's close to 2 hits if you want to crack those fetch
Yeah,
lands when anything else comes along.
yeah. All right, so I guess there is that Singleton Pyroblast, and like you said, I mean, maybe the next iteration is to play 2 of them in the main deck, because killing Murktide is one of the big influences to play main deck Pyroblast right now. I mean, sure, it counters all kinds of stuff, but really just there's no other removal spell in blue-red that can handle this thing.
People have tried something like that gun to bounce it, and then it might not be able to immediately come back down again. It slows down the whole operation while also being a remove a spell for Raga one when that was still around. That
Mhm.
has completely fallen out of favor, and like you mentioned, it's really just a Pyroblast now.
Okay, well, Ponder is kept. Extra one in hand. Land from Expressive Iteration gets played. Mishra's Bauble. Okay, not super exciting on turn 7 as it is on turn 1.
Yeah. You can like now that we have fetch lands, you can do the thing where basically you use the Bauble to scry. I think we still
Mhm.
know the top card from the ponder, so if we don't need it, we can fetch, then scry, then fetch again if you don't want the card. So we can look at a reasonable number of cards. It's just gonna be like David is also still gonna be in the game. Like if we played against somebody who's never gonna play a spell in the entire game again, then we have like a chance. But even then, I'm not sure we will be able to get there.
Right.
Murktide a big problem.
Okay.
You know what would be worse? Like if you use the Mishra's Bauble on the opponent, you look at the top card and it's another Temporal Mastery, and you're like,
Yeah.
please not.
Well, then you just gotta make faces and bluff really hard that it's a worthless card.
Yeah, I
Smile
mean,
and be happy and hope they fetch.
in the blind, if the opponent has a fetch land, the opponent might as well use the fetch land just to deny the information, unless you have a reason to keep the fetch land because you want to optimize some cantrip, I guess. But yeah, that's one of those situations, right, where people +2 and chase, and then you either gonna crack the fetch land or not.
All right, so here is, I believe it's Malevolent Hermit.
Yeah.
This is a newer card. Maybe we can pop that up. This is a walking. It's a 2/1 that can be sacrificed to mana leak and instant or sorcery, I believe. Malevolent Hermit is the card we're talking about.
Yeah, that's also a recent addition to Legacy. I think it had been around for a little longer, but it only started getting adopted like a month or two ago. Mostly into Doomsday because it's so annoying to deal with. When it
Right.
comes down, you don't really know what you're supposed to do with it. Should you counter it? That accelerates the whole idea of disturbing it back into play, or should you just like let it sit there? But you will barely ever be able to pay the mana leak cost of 3 for that. It's just like one of those cards that are all around super annoying, like
Yeah,
super annoying.
exactly. It's not even. It's yeah. You can't even say it's like really good. It's just irritating. And the backside is, I believe it
can't be countered.
Yeah. So your spells can't be countered. That's
I'm actually not sure
problematic.
whether it's like non-creature spells. Yeah, it says
Yeah,
non-creature spells. Yeah.
yeah, which is excellent when you switch over and decide to actually play Doomsday. But on the
Not even
front side,
legendary. I don't know. It has like a legendary vibe to me.
Sure.
I can't put my finger on it, but there was no characterizing it back. But yeah, Harrison really needs to rip like a god from the top, and we're not even okay. So since we are not using this on ourselves and we're keeping the card on the top, that must be a really good card on the top of our deck.
What would
Harrison's team
constitute a
look
really
good.
good card right now? It's gotta be more Murktides, right? Another his own Murktide. That's what Harrison needs, it seems like.
Yeah, a bigger Murktide. Like
Yeah.
there's a way where you try to go for Pyroblast, I guess. You could even pay for the mana leak here. That's the only two options I really see. Even if we want to do something like Expressive Iteration again, it's doable, but it's still a stretch. And then you only get to still play the game. But that's what you're playing for in the first place. But you're trying to get to level 0, right? You're not even
Right.
like getting ahead.
Yeah. Drawing multiple wastelands is not the answer for Harrison, but that's what he's got. Well, wastelands are playing targets. David has a full set of Underground Season play, but he doesn't need them. He's committed his resources to the board. This is on Harrison to find anything of relevance.
Something that's annoying about the Hermit as well is because it's an activated ability, Harrison can't even use a Force or a Daze or anything to fight over it. Like you really can only satisfy it with raw mana. And okay, we found one of those guys.
Yeah, there is a Murktide. Yeah, David even could have sacrificed the Hermit on the Expressive Iteration just to take up Harrison's turn, as Harrison can't really afford to give up another turn. But here's the Murktide. It is found, and that can't be stopped by the Hermit. So it's going to want to be 7/7 at minimum here.
Yeah, definitely 7/7, maybe an 8/8. Like ideally an 8/8. I guess if you ever find like a second Murktide, that graveyard still looks big enough to make it.
Yeah,
as well.
the graveyard is huge. All right, so it is going to be an 8/8 Murktide Regent.
I'm actually looking at the deck list, whether he has that thing. Yeah, there's a Mystic Sanctuary. That's one reason to keep some of your juicier spells in the yard, like usually an expressive iteration. I keep saying it wrong. And that's so convenient because you can actually do that again. And if you find something like a Pyroblast, you can also reuse it. And
Mhm.
I usually thought like these Mystic Sanctuaries and Delver decks, I never really believed in them in Delver decks just because it's like comes to play tapped land and you need to have 4 lands in play in the first place to make it work, and then it only puts on top. But now that these decks are as grindy as they are, like relative for a Delver deck, right? That's
Mhm.
the big thing. That comes up quite a lot. Like I've played this deck all week and it comes up almost every single match, and it's really, really good. Like when you get to put one of the best card advantage spells in Legacy on top of your deck at basically no cost, that's really where you want to be. So we gotta find the Pyroblast, the one of Pyroblast, to eventually be able to attack there. But for now, we've somewhat stabilized the board.
Yeah. Now, and Murktide Regent grows when instant sorcery leaves your graveyard, right? It doesn't matter how it leaves. Is that correct?
Yeah,
So,
so I think if you
so if you Mystic Sanctuary, because David's at 9 right now. Yeah, so a Mystic Sanctuary pulling a card out of the graveyard and putting it on top of the deck would actually grow the Murktide up to a lethal hit. That's kind of cool if we could potentially see that happen. It's unlikely, as Harrison has a lot of other things to get through.
I've seen it when somebody dredged Loam. I'm pretty sure it also triggers off Loam because then it
Oh,
comes straight to your hand. Yeah.
sure. Yeah, because it leaves the graveyard. Yeah, that's a bunch of interesting ways. And okay, well, the easiest way, the classic way to grow Murktide is to play another Murktide. And that's what we see here from David. You guys messing around with your talk of fanciness with Mystic Sanctuary. Just going to play another one.
Yeah, people didn't like the final season of Game of Thrones. We're just making our own Game of Thrones. 3 giant dragons.
Okay, so
Yeah, that's not really like you're not gonna dice that. That's not really gonna help in any kind of way. That dragon demands a chump block already, so
yes. Yeah.
it might even be that like I guess the craziest scenarios where we draw a Brainstorm into like 3 bowls, but then we probably don't get there because of the hermit.
Right.
This is
Yep,
a
that
pretty
wouldn't work either.
situation.
Yeah, that's a 10-10. So even if it was only a 9-9, Harrison could block and then fetch the sanctuary and trade, but the opposing David's Murktide being 10-10 shuts that down. So trying to figure out the attacks here.
Yeah, we just go all in. We
Mhm.
deal 3, Harrison down to 5. I mean, technically, Harrison could have a bounce spell, but doesn't
Yeah,
like we can even counter that with the hermit, so it doesn't really matter.
right. All right, so there's a block. Down it goes, and yeah, you said it. I mean, David is probably or Harrison probably realizes what David's playing at this point because of Temporal Mastery, but David did not need the Doomsdays to win this game.
Oh man, that's I'm usually skeptical when people do that, right? When they cut all the established cards from a combo deck, like Dark Ritual, right? That's just like a sacred cow almost. You can't Dark Ritual for a combo deck, and then they also remove Daze, which is something I think we haven't talked about yet. So
Mhm.
really, it's just like I'm gonna play my spells, I'm gonna play my removal spells, get some card advantage here and there, and then the big dragon's gonna come down. And if all of that is not gonna work, I'm gonna have this Doomsday backup plan, but half the time I don't even need it, and
Right.
it's kind like people have been trying to come up with good names for the deck. Maybe chat has some good ideas how to call it. Mid-range Doomsday. It sounds pretty lame. I don't know. Tempo Doomsday. There's not really much tempo left now that we've got Daze. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Dragon Doomsday, something like that.
Day of
All
the
right.
Dragon is another card actually.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Okay, so Expressive Iteration picked up on Mystic Sanctuary goes on top of the deck. I mean, this is something, but Harrison needs so much right now. This There are what, 2 lethal dragons and then 2 other creatures.
And like you suggested earlier, there's even a scenario where we just try to fight over the Expressive Iteration here, just so it
Yeah.
would nearly tap out Harrison, and like even if he finds a Murktide Regent, that alone is not going to be good enough.
Right. Yeah. And David thinks about it and decides to let it through.
Yeah, so what we basically need here is like a Murktide Regent and a Pyroblast, and
Yeah, that would get it started. So David Delgado does pick up our first legacy coverage game of the day. But yeah, as Julian insinuated, curiosity about the sideboard here. Let's go ahead and look at the deck lists again so we can see if David is potentially going to be transforming, or he could transform out of the Doomsday plan. Looks like probably not. Probably sticking to it.
Yeah, is there anything? I guess you might want to bring in the Pyroblasts. You got that one of Volcanic Island. I mean, that's eh, but it could be worth it, right? Just like taking out some of the Murktide regions, that would be a big thing.
Yeah.
Other than that, Raisin
Yeah.
Borrower buys some time. It's annoying against Murktide Regent. People, that's also, you can look at these sideboards and be like, oh yeah, I can see an application for this. I can see an application for that. For example, Plague Engineer on Human takes out DRC as well as Diver of Secrets, the M-flipped one. But I don't know if that's maybe too much almost. Unless you say, okay, I'm going to take out the entire Doomsday package.
Yeah. Okay. So if you do that, so we have a moment here as one of the players is going to use the bathroom. So the entire Doomsday package would consist of 4 Doomsday, Thassa's Oracle, maybe
You have to Temporal Mastery as well.
Temporal Mastery, maybe Duress at that point, or Knight's Whisper. Well, Knight's Whisper is a nice way to bring back some card advantage compared to Expressive Iteration. 2 for 1, even though it costs you some life, and doesn't, of course, you cast a card this turn, so it's some benefit there. But yeah, so likely just some addition of removal, maybe Brazen Borrowers to bounce Murktides and reset them. Let's go ahead and look at what Harrison's options are. All right. So Snapcaster Mage, Pyroblast, sounds good. You want to do anything else?
I'm actually reading Maddening Hex right now.
Yeah. So let's bring up Maddening Hex on the screen so we don't have to squint. And we won't pretend that we all know exactly what this card is.
So it's basically a curse that
Yeah.
you attach to the opponent, and every time they play a non-creature spell, you roll a d6, and then you deal damage equal to the result to them. And then you get to attach it. Okay, so it stays on the opponent in the single player. Yeah, okay, cool.
So
I guess the average is like a 3.5 that you get to deal, so it's better than Parasitic Pillar or something, even though it's 1 more mana. I see the idea, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to admit it's not a card I've ever seen before. But okay, so an anti-spell. I mean, Doomsday plays a lot of spells. In fact, the way Doomsday works, losing half your life total, it would be potentially somewhat difficult to win through that. But I don't know that that's something that Harrison's going to bother with here, as David didn't bother with Doomsday in the first game. So
you
really,
might bring it on. It's just like, it's so annoying. Like you pointed out, right? You don't need to bother with Doomsday in the first place. And if you bring a card into the matchup, there's going to be some splash damage on your cantrips as well. But if you bring in a card that's primarily for shutting off Doomsday, and it's like a big mana investment as well, like 3 mana in Legacy, you can buy a house for that kind of mana. And then you sit there, and that's just going to be a bunch of big dragons that are going to come your way. And yeah, you get to deal like 2 or 3 damage every once in a while. It's not great. And there's also not too much you can really side out. Like even the lightning bolts, in a way, that they get to take out the Malevolent Hermits, especially once they are flipped. You probably still need to cut some of them just to bring in the Pyroblasts. It's just annoying all over the place. And I think Doomsday, at least with regards to this matchup, has found a place where it's playable. Whereas previously, Doomsday suffered a lot versus Delver. Like we have people in our Discord, in the Everyday Eternal Discord. We've just happened to have a lot of dedicated Doomsday players, and every other week you hear the tales of, oh, I lost to Delver here, I lost to Delver there, I didn't get to the top 8 because of Delver. And the Doomsday deck that we are seeing right now, that really is a creation of this kind of shared feeling between Doomsday players, that they want to be better against Delver, so they took extreme measures.
Well, we'll see if it pays off. Certainly looked good in game 1. All kinds of, Baleful Strix by itself, just if it hits a table against a deck like this, you can't ignore it. Like, it's the kind of the thing that about cards like Baleful Strix, Ice Fang Quaddle, sure, it's the cantrip, but it's not actually a 2 for 1 unless the body matters. In this matchup, the body's going to matter every single time. So it is super duper strong there. I mean, Pyroblast is another way to deal with it, but that get boarded in. But Pyroblast, has its eyes set on dealing with Murktide Regent. So, I mean, stressing those is is tricky also. One thing that could matter is, so we had the Volcanic Island. You said there's one Volcanic Island in David's deck for 3 Pyroblasts coming in. So if Harrison prioritizes Wasteland on that, that might make a little uncomfortable for David's mana base to handle. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah,
Guess,
and
yeah.
technically you also have the Lotus Petals, but
Right.
that doesn't feel too great. You know, if you have to do it, you'd still rather true for one yourself than face the big Murktide. It's
Yeah.
just like, it's so funny, Joe. Like every time we talk about Legacy, everything comes down to Murktide again.
Yeah.
Even these common are so dominated by Murktide now.
Yeah, I mean, you get rid of Ragavan, and then the deck's just say, like, well, just kidding. Ragavan wasn't that important. We're still good. Murktide's just going to be. We're now going to have different colors. We have blue-red Delver. Now we have blue-black Delver. They're not even playing Delver. Wow.
Oh, and that's a really good. Oh man, I was almost gonna bring that up, but we hadn't enough time. I sometimes tried that strategy with Avs when I played against Blue Red Delver. You bring in the ley line, and most of the time, Izzet Delver isn't able to get rid of the ley line, and all of a sudden, like the Murktides are never ever gonna come down, and
Yeah.
Dragon Rage Channelers are gonna be 1/1s for the entire time.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see if that's worth a card, depending on Harrison's draw. If Harrison draws several Delver Secrets, this ley line's a bust. If, like you were saying, if he draws Dragon Rage Channelers and Murktide Regents, then it's great.
Yeah, we'll see how it's gonna work out. Actually, let me think. So you got like 4 volcanic islands, you got 1 steam winds, you got 1 island. Yeah, you're never gonna cast your. I guess you have the Mystic Sanctuary as well. So if you find all your lands, you can make a 3/3 dragon for 7 mana. I mean,
Maybe
Alpha would play that.
Yeah, that's a bit rough. So yeah, I mean that's kind of be a bit deflating here for Harrison potentially. Well, there's a Delver though, so that's good. That is the primary way around that. And
And I
there
guess
isn't.
I've lost my fair share of games where I had Leyline down. Definitely don't underestimate the power of just getting there for like 2, 3 a turn every once in a while. David, though, I think David must have something like 6 removal spells for Delver between 4 blasts and I think at least 2 fatal pushes. So he's not that scared of Delver in the long run. But you know,
Right.
sometimes the matches just play out. I mean, from Harrison's side, you must protect the Delver. That's the best creature in your entire deck that you're ever gonna get. And I think that's where all of your Force of Words needs to go for quite a while until you feel like I could just like, you know, either burn them out or swarm them with a bunch of 1/1s. But it's I almost want to call it favorable for no, it's definitely not favorable for Harrison. It's like a really weird spot right now. But I just had the experience where I overrated how good Leyline actually ended up being in that matchup.
Right. So David actually had 2 ley lines, only dropped one of them, and then kept the second, understanding that Harrison probably can't get it off the board anyway, and then just use that brainstorm to get rid of the second copy. So that is nice, and that's something that modern players don't have access to as far as getting rid of duplicates or excess cards, but it is shuffled right back in the deck here. And Harrison's Delver does not flip. Inconvenient, as he could really use some good news right now, facing down a ley line from a deck that still hasn't even cast the card it's named after and is already up a game.
That's just how it goes, right? I think on David's side, were you able to see any of the cards in his hand right now?
No, I
Because
don't
like
know
I
what's
said,
in
like
there.
right now we're dealing next turn there's a good chance we start dealing 4 a turn. And if we're sitting on a bunch of, you know, like Doomsdays, unless we side those out, that could be a problem.
Right. I mean, with Basic Island on the board first, Doomsday is not getting cast forever, and it was fetched out. So it may be that Doomsdays were boarded out. We'll see. Another island. Okay, so
Yeah.
David not concerned about black mana, and definitely not concerned about casting Doomsday.
Yeah, thus far we weren't able to find like any of our fetch lands that would be able to deliver the basic swamp. But now that we are so happy to fetch those islands and we're not playing Dark Ritual, there's a very real chance that we just like straight up sided out Doomsday and the entire package that comes along with it, especially since we had to make room for Leyline.
Right. All right. So there is a swamp.
Ugh.
Baleful Strix.
Yeah.
Can
Baleful
that
Strix on top
resolve?
of what I mentioned, right? We have those 6 removal spells, and we have 4 Baleful Strix to stop the dive on its track.
Yeah.
Like, this is almost. I remember the first time I did it, my friend called it, you just like relegated Blue-Red Delver to a draft deck almost. Like, they got a bunch of 1/1s, and then they have this 1/3/2 flyer. But that's pretty much it, and they have to make it work somehow.
Yeah, there was a Pyroblast in Harrison's hand, I believe. Chose not to cast it against that Baleful Strix, which I understand trying to save for something more important, but Baleful Strix is shutting you down right now.
I wouldn't be scared to actually maybe he was trying to play around Daze if he expected David to have Daze. But on the other hand, the Baleful Strix is the answer to the very best card in your deck right now. And yeah, there's a Murktide Regent that might come down, but Murktide Regent is not your problem. Like if there's going to be Murktide Regent in a Baleful Strix, if you counter the Murktide Regent or destroy it, there's still going to be the Baleful Strix. So you might as well gamble on David not having the Murktide Regent in the first place and just trying to make way for your Delver to get in there.
All right. Well, let's see. Ponder Keep. I mean, this Baleful Strix hardly even wants to block. I mean, there's a bunch of 1/1s on their side of the board. Well, it's not going to be able to block. There's a Lightning Bolt and takes it out. And David points out one of those Dragon Rage Channelers is Summoning Sick. And Harrison obviously really liked that Ponder as wants to keep all 3 cards from it. So it bypasses the Surveil triggers.
Oh, it's going to be 3 mana. Oh my god.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my god.
Wow. Well, that is going to clean house. Harrison Fang has, I believe, a Daze and a Pyroblast. Not that you can Pyroblast Plague Engineer anyway, and just a Wasteland untapped. And I mean, this is a nightmare.
This is lights out. Like at this point, you gotta find one of your remaining Pyroblast lightning bolts. Otherwise, you're not even gonna ever be able to drop a creature here.
Right. I mean, you're not dropping Murktide ever, and all the rest of your creatures are just dead on arrival. Wow, that Plague Engineer. I don't know what the creature type is on Plague Engineer. I doubt it's actually a nightmare. It's probably I think it's a carrier.
Carrier, yeah.
Yeah, but I feel bad for Harrison Fang. I mean, he's 3-0 in this tournament, so some room to give here. But this matchup, David is just running circles around him.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that this carrier, I was going to say, this Plague Engineer is going to go all the way now. For everything that Harrison's deck can do, nothing really matters. Like there's 3 lightning bolts left in your deck, unless you cited some of them out. And those are the only cards that actually do something here now, and you gotta find those. And there's another one.
So, okay. So David Delgado obviously there's some different ideas about sideboarding than we did, as these are not the cards we discussed.
Yeah, I mentioned them as one of those cards where you might be over sideboarding, but David is probably has played this matchup a lot more than I have, and he's super dedicated to it. David knows, you know what? I can play the mid-range, the fair game, and Delver is not going to be good enough against that. I don't even need this Doomsday card. Just it's a lifeless card. I don't need it.
Plague Engineer and Leyline is a nice combo for Dragon Rage Channeler. It'll never survive.
In a way, when you think about Doomsday, it's a tutor. But what do you need tutor cards for when all the cards in your deck are absolutely powerful in the first place? You don't need to tutor anything on top of your deck. It's just like, I'm just going to slam all these cards as they come to my hand, and they're going to destroy the opponent.
All right, here's a Brainstorm. I wonder whether David took out some Lotus Petals, and maybe he did, but at least one in play still. Okay, so we'll get that sorted out. And, well, I trust that the viewers at home are still seeing the correct board state. I'm not going to lie, our feed that Julie and I are seeing.
Yeah, I think we're going through some kind of time travel right now.
Yeah, exactly. We are, believe it or not, and this is probably not even worth explaining, we are seeing, I believe, David Delgado's current board state and Harrison Fang's board state from 2 turns ago. I don't even still understand how that's possible, but that's what's happening.
Yeah, and I think David is going to get down another Murktide. Yeah, and I honestly want to say, this game is pretty much over. There's always the chance of Brainstorm into 3 cards that you absolutely need, but what are the odds of that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we saw the same type of thing. And there's a Malevolent Hermit just in case. And Harrison just, I mean, I think you're just gonna accept the defeat on this one and then just plan for the next few rounds. Because okay, sure, Pyroblast on Murktide. Okay.
Sure. David's just like, okay, sure. I'm just still gonna have like 6 power on the board against your 12 life.
Right.
Okay, so I think we found a lightning bolt.
I mean, that's a start.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the 4th card in our hand is, but the 2 dazes that we got there, they don't really do anything. Yeah. Like so often in Legacy, the one card we want to draw is Brainstorm, and ideally
Mhm.
immediately on the next turn. Oh, and that kind of comes back even. It's so funny. Like we always talk about, like, oh, the effect you get to mana leak something, and when it's back into play, all your non-creature spells are uncounterable. On top of that, it's a creature. It's like a sticky
Yeah.
creature. When it comes back, it attacks. You have to remove it twice if you really want to get rid of it. Like the body often doesn't even matter in the first place. But here we are. This is really it very much feels like a game of limited or sealed, where you got all these scrappy plays and cards that barely fit together, and then we just like to cross the finish line with a bunch of those guys.
Okay, so what's the target here? I mean, all these the plague engineers have to both die for Harrison to ever be able to do anything. So I think he's got to target one of them.
Yeah, I was also gonna think like we're probably gonna target the plague engineers
Hmm.
because this one, the hermit can even be recast in the second main phase, right? It's gonna go to the graveyard and then we just like get it
Mhm.
back. So I guess we take 2 less damage that way, but we also would take 2 less damage if we bolted one of the plague engineers.
All right, so 4 damage comes across. Harrison drops to 8. Cavern of Souls in play for David, just in case Harrison thought he was going to do something clever like counterspell something or, try and win the game. David's like, nope, I don't think so. So now you
Um,
can't counter the creatures and you can't counter the non-creatures.
This is I've never seen a Delver deck dismantled on basically every single thing that it tries to, like every single angle that Delver has, like whether it's like counters, quick creatures, anything. It doesn't matter. Like all the cards, they don't matter. It's really about removing what's on the board and okay.
Oh, so Harrison did bring in the curse.
And we get to put something on top of our deck, which would probably be the lightning bolt.
Mm-hmm. Harrison's like, yeah, I'm not even gonna bother. I'm just showing off the curse. Curse gets some camera time. David comes in for another 6. I think Harrison drops to 2.
2. Yeah, it should be
Yeah.
2, I guess. And at this point, I think we don't even have enough red mana sources in play for a brainstorm into everything we need to get there. Maybe there's a world where we find another. Even if you need to drop another volcanic island, then we don't have enough cards. Yeah, this is pretty much over, and I think Harrison knows it. But
Yeah.
cute play showing off the curse,
Yeah.
putting into legacy.
All right. Here is the Murktide. Pick up 1 counter, 4/4 Murktide. Good enough. Double Harrison's life total.
Harrison sitting, I think, still on those 2 dazes, and it's just like, no, wait. What do we find? We found the brainstorm, but
Okay.
you're gonna get 3 cards, so it's gotta be something like removal spell, it's just like it's not gonna be good enough. Removal spell,
No.
removal spell, removal spell, and then you still die to one of the plague engineers.
So neither player sideboarded the way we expected, and only one of the plans seems to have worked out at this point. I mean, it also has to do with the when in the game the cards were drawn. Leyline was opening hand. That's great. The curse was like after David had cast everything he wanted. That's not as good. But really, the first plague engineer that wiped out 3 creatures was pretty decisive. Harrison did end up with a couple removal spells here.
Yeah, 2 removal spells, and I'm not really sure what the 3rd card is. Could be, what is that? Maybe an alternate art diver or something. Oh, it's a Snapcaster Mage. Okay.
Another card wiped out by the Leyline. Yeah, so David really had everything covered there and advances to 4-0 in our Legacy 5K.